Hi everyone, Stephanie and Andrew here. Welcome to a very special on-location weekly update.
We had an opportunity to catch up with some legislators. Take a look. Hi, we're here with Delegate Wendy Goditis from House District 10, and we're very excited about being with you here today. Delegate Goditis, this is your first year being Vice Chair of House Agriculture Committee. How's that been?
Well, the moment I was elected the first time in 2017, my first priority was to make sure that the speaker knew that agriculture was the committee I was most interested in. Lifelong countrywoman, farmers as neighbors and friends all my life, and those issues are important not only to me, certainly to Virginia and to the nation and the world. So I'm so happy to be there, and the honor this year, after having just come through my first re-election, to have the speaker tell me that she wanted me to be vice chair. That was a tremendous honor. Sitting next to number one, Chairman Ken Plum, is also a tremendous honor. His commitment and interest and intelligence, I've learned so much from him, and the things that have occurred before the committee this year, things that have been coming for years and came to fruition this year, such as peace on Menhaden, an agreement on Menhaden, and that's going to it's going to leave the General Assembly, which I think is the right thing to do. Things like 1422, where Chairman Plum and I worked really hard to protect the farmers. The first drafts that came through, we said this is too hard on the farmers. So I was just so glad to see that the version that went through made it much less punitive for our farmers. That's really, really important. So I think we accomplished a lot this year.
And you've also sponsored a couple pieces of legislation related to agriculture. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Well, the biggest one for me was the hemp bill. That it was the administration bill, and I was very honored to carry it. And it's so important, hemp being a very new and very rapidly growing industry in Virginia. Delegate Danny Marshall likes to say rope, not dope, and I like to say rugs, not drugs. So it's so important that we set up a structure, and a lot of that is to protect the farmers. I know that the 0.3 number of THC seems low, but if we don't right now stay in line with the federal number, then the farmers are in danger of not being able to get crop insurance, and that endangers our farmers. I'm all about protecting our farmers. So hopefully the federal regulations will become more reasonable over time, and then we can match those and our farmers will be protected. So that legislation is really important. My pledge that I will do every year, I have done every year, and I will do every year that I am in this house, is to keep asking for more money for farmland preservation. If we don't have farms, we don't have food. If we don't have farms, we don't have agritourism, places for people to get out of the city, get out of the suburbs, and go see what real life is. So that's something that I always will carry. There were a couple other smaller ones, but those are the two that meant the most to me this year.
Great, well we appreciate that recap, and we've enjoyed working with you this year and appreciate you taking some time today to speak with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for representing and looking after our farmers who deserve to be looked after.
Thank you.
We're here with Delegate Michael Weber of House District 18. Delegate Weber, you were reappointed back to the House Agriculture Committee after being off for a couple of years. As a farmer yourself, can you tell us what bills have gone through or passed the session that may be a big impact to farmers?
Well, to be honest, there's been a number of different bills that have been passed. As we were talking about earlier, it's been a lot of defense this year, but also I think there's some positivity in there, in that when it comes to hemp production and things like that, there have been a number of bills that have helped facilitate that. The other thing is there was what I consider a real big win in House Bill 1422 that really would have stuck at least a lot of farmers in my district and that when it comes to the cattlemen, etc., with the best management practices. The way the bill was written with the WIP plan, it would have mandated a lot of those practices 5 years from now. And we have been struggling to try and get the Ag Best Management Practices, the SL6 funding, SL6 practices funded for ever since I've been in the General Assembly. And so to then have those practices mandated when we've underfunded them in the General Assembly, I thought was very, very unfair, and it would have put a lot of producers out of business. So the farmers rallied, and we got that bill amended, and that was a real big win, because I think it really opened up the eyes of some of the folks that don't live in rural Virginia to what we are willing to do and what we can do. So I think that was actually a really big win. A lot of people were high-fiving themselves after that committee. It's great to be back on agriculture, just because we see a lot of issues, that from labor issues to pesticide issues, they can really affect our industry as a whole, and being able to have a say in that is always a good positive.
Absolutely. And you mentioned folks who didn't grow up in rural areas or don't live in rural areas. What advice would you have for farmers for communicating with legislators?
The best one is to actually have try and have an in-person communication. So, like for 1422, there were a lot of people that came down. We had several Farm Bureau members from my district that, since I'm a member myself, and serve on a number of boards with guys, that, it was nice to see them down too. But the way the Virginia legislature is basically formed up now, you have a lot of folks from Northern Virginia and a lot of the urban areas that don't have the interaction with agriculture that we do, and they need to be educated. We as an industry need to educate them too. It needs to be a one-on-one. It needs to be in a small group setting. Emails, phone calls help, but that human interaction really helps. And I, for me, particularly being back on agriculture, sitting on commerce and labor, I mean, to be honest, that's one of my biggest jobs, it seems, is to educate my fellow legislators on, how we actually do use pesticide use, how we are willing to continue to fence out our streams and do best management practices to protect the bay. And I mean, last year we passed a piece of legislation that did low interest loans through DEQ, and they've already put out $10.8 million in loans. And so when you can tell your story in that manner, I think it makes a really big impact. And when we saw the Senate companion being debated in committee, I think there were some eyes that were opened. And if we can get those folks to see, and also remind them that 3 times a day you need a farmer, and that those of us in agriculture, our lives are built in service to provide goods and services to our fellow man. That when we can tell our story, I think it's really, really educational to help my other colleagues who don't have that day to day form good policy, rather than just what they've been seeing on the internet.
Well, thanks for sharing that perspective, and we've enjoyed working with you this session and really appreciate your time here today.
Thank you for all you do, and I just have to say thanks to all of the Farm Bureau members that came out. I think it made a really big impact.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoy these interviews with legislators.